Ladies and gentlemen, friends, welcome to our special session here at the India Today South Conclave, where we are looking at a question that has troubled many over the last 69 years since independence in different forms at different times. The simple question that we are asking at the India Today South Conclave in this session is there a distinct South Indian identity? What is the South Indian identity that exists in 2016 or 2017 in terms of region, in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of caste? Joining me now, three very special guests, all three political representatives from different parties and different states in southern India. Please welcome Tyagarajan Palanivel of the Dravida Munnetra Kadgam, the DMK. Please welcome Dr. Rajiv Gowda of the Congress Party, Member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. And please welcome Asaduddin Owaisi of the MIM, its MP from Hyderabad. And I'm going to start with that essential question, Mr. Palanivel, which is there a distinct southern identity that exists in 2017? Or can I say that that dream that your party leaders at one time had of a Dravida Nadu, of a separate Dravidian state or a separate Dravidian identity across southern India is now over? In 2017, does that identity exist or not?
I think those are two slightly different questions. As a legal or a political question, I think we gave up that ghost in the late 60s or mid 60s. So I think the call for a different country or a different identity based on nationalism was long ago given up. If on the other hand you ask me, do I have to conform to a particular stereotype in order to be considered nationalist? Or is there some criteria based on which if I look like this or if I feel like this or if one of the big national parties forms the government, only then I'm part of the national kind of polity, then I think that's a very misguided notion. I think strong countries, as my good friend Mr. Paneerselvam, the Chief Minister, spoke this morning, strong countries want strong states. Strong states build strong countries. And the fact that we continue to want to keep a cultural identity as well as play our part in nation building are not dichotomous in any way.
So there is a cultural identity.
Absolutely.
The sub-national identity is over. The idea that there would be a separate sub-national identity is over. You're saying there is a cultural identity that still survives and endures.
Well, let me tell you, Rajdeep, the cultural identity is 2,500 years old. The notion of the nation is 60 years old. Which do you think is going to survive? Obviously, the cultural identity will continue to survive. It has done so for 2,000 years.
But as a Tamil cultural identity distinct from a Telugu cultural identity, as distinct from a Kannada cultural identity, as distinct from a Keralite cultural identity. These are separate identities.
I have no qualms with the mutual harmonious coexistence of a man having or a woman having her own or his own identity by language, by culture, by literature, as well as being 100% nationalist. These are not necessarily contradictory terms. So I hope they continue to survive. In every culture that exists for hundreds of years or millennia, I hope such cultural identities continue to survive and are imbibed by the youth of today, without in any way diluting their national ethic or their patriotism.
You know, the key word there is language. Rajiv Gowda, would you accept that once Nehru decided linguistic states in the 1950s, you effectively ended the notion of a unified southern identity? Identity today is defined, a Keralite defines his identity through language, a Tamilian defines his language through language, a Kannadiga defines his identity through language, as does someone from, ironically from Telangana, which is split into, Andhra, which is split into two. But again, language is a critical factor. Is language the deciding factor of identity in southern India today?
Well, language has always been the deciding factor. And whether whether the Tamil Dravida movement dreamt of something larger, I would not think that the rest of South India would have readily gone along with that particular South Indian Dravida vision. See, there are many things that we have as our own unique linguistic culture, our own regional history, etc., that we are extremely proud of. And that history does not necessarily require us to be part of a larger framework. We're very happy within our own state.
No, but there was a larger framework in the days of the Madras presidency. You know, from the days of the Madras presidency to the times where we are now part of a proud Indian nation, language has, in a sense, become the big new factor in a sense. If Nehru had not brought linguistic states, there were those who believed that the old Madras presidency should have the same territory that included large parts of Andhra, in the 1950s.
So, if you go back to history, you'll see that the Congress party was organized according to linguistic Pradesh Congress committees. And so, that idea predates the actual linguistic division from 1956 onwards. And the basic point has always been that people, and that the people who share a same linguistic affinity and a culture, and ways of living, etc., have always wanted to live together. And today, the reason why we are not really hung up on these issues is because we have a tremendous self-confidence that comes from having succeeded in every field. If you look at South India, and any of our states, you take entrepreneurship, you take education, you take politics, politics, it took a while to break through, but we had a couple of South Indian prime ministers, and sports, and media, wherever. You take the field, and we've got role models, we've got exemplars, and so there's a tremendous sense that we are probably ahead of the rest of the nation in that sense.
Let me ask you, is the South-North divide therefore over? This idea of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan, this idea in a sense that you will have North India which will overwhelm South India through the imposition of Hindi. Am I to understand South India is very comfortable now in its own identity in that sense? The fear of the North overwhelming you no longer exists.
I certainly don't think there's any fear of the North overwhelming us. If you actually look at certain features of South India, we've had the three-language formula. We've had a Dakshin Bharat Hindi Prachar Sabha that's over 100 years old. So we've actually been quite welcoming of interchange, of interaction, learning the language, engaging. Especially those of us from Karnataka, we're happy to speak to you in your language. Right? So that's the sort of openness that we've always demonstrated. And what we are surprised by is the lack of awareness, the chauvinism that often emanates from North India, etc. And then we just sort of dismiss it as a stage of development that that they've got some ways to go.
So there's a superiority. You feel a sense of superiority towards North India now.
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that we've done well, and we just want everyone else to do as well, if not better than us. Yeah.
Before I come to Mr. Owaisi, just a word, Mr. Tyagarajan. Suppose I speak to a Chennai rickshawala in Hindi. Would he have a problem today?
It's hard for me to, since I'm not in the field, give you a
Since you don't travel by rickshaw. Once you're a politician, you don't have to travel like us Aam Aadmis, right?
I never did travel by rickshaw, and I lived away for 30 years, so my data set is not good. But my point is, I think we did not historically, and I'm now going back to the Madras presidency and the Justice Party, did not like the notion of somebody thrusting a language on us. But if you look at English, which was on one of the points that we were going to talk about, we were one of the first states, first presidencies, and then Madras state, and then Tamil Nadu to say, we're more than happy to take up an international language that gives our youth connectivity to the world, employment opportunities, etc. So, if you ask me, is there a likelihood that the average auto driver in Tamil Nadu understands Hindi? Less odds. How about if he understands English? Better odds than almost any other place. So that's the trade-off, I think.
Asaduddin Owaisi, interestingly, you in a sense also represent this melting pot that is southern India. You come from the old city of Hyderabad, and in a way part of the old Nizam state as it was then. You now are part of a state which has broken into two. Ironically, despite a shared language, eventually you decided that the Telangana identity and the Andhra identity needed to be separate. Is politics at the end of the day the real division today in the south? That politics divided the state of Andhra Pradesh, Or was it about culture? Was it about history?
Like, actually, Congress divided that state. So, so,
No, hold on. You had
so,
you have a Telangana Rashtra Samiti that fought for the idea of a Telangana identity. Why only blame the Congress?
yeah.
The Congress is responsible for most of India's ills in the last 69 years. Let's assume.
And all of India's successes. Thank you.
Okay, and all of India's success. But go ahead.
Well, Rajdeep, you have to be ready for another division of Rayalaseema. You see, what Congress had done when Fazl Ali Commission was formed, Fazl Ali Commission had clearly stated that the old Nizam state, comprising of three languages, Marathi, Kannada and Telugu. The Kannada got Karnataka, Marathi became part of Maharashtra. The one remaining where Telugu was spoken was joined with the Madras Presidency.
Yes.
Fazl Ali Commission clearly stated that, this is not going to work. And so anyway, it took us a lot of time to understand it. And then there was a sentiment within Telangana that we needed a separate state and the development was not proper, and so on and so forth. But please understand that this question of yours, will a person in Chennai be able to understand Hindi? Why should he? We have federalism. What about, say, if a person goes to Delhi and speaks in Tamilian? Can an auto driver in Delhi understand Tamilian? Why isn't that question asked over there? You see, this talk of Hindi being the dominant culture, language, it's no more, because that is why all these feelings have arisen. So we have to understand that federalism is an important factor in our constitution, our country, and that has to be understood.
No, it's interesting you're saying this because you are making every effort to enter UP and Bihar yourself. I mean, it's almost as if you're not satisfied with being a leader of old Hyderabad. You want to make a dent in Maharashtra, my home state, where you've already made a dent. Now you're spreading your wings to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. You're trying to create a or your own identity, which is some kind of a pan-Islamic identity. That's your aim, isn't it?
I am a Muslim. I'm a proud Indian Muslim. I have my religious identity. But why is it that if I believe in democracy, I want my party to spread, what has pan-Islamism got to do with it?
Now, what comes first for you? What comes first for you? Your Hyderabadi identity, your Telangana identity, your Muslim identity, or your Indian identity?
Rajdeep, you see, this is the problem with people like you. Even after 69 years, you put me this question. You asked me this question.
Yes.
When I, as a Muslim, rejected Jinnah's theory outrightly, I said nothing to do. No, we don't believe in two-nation theory. We believed in Hazrat Ismail Saab, Rahmatullah, what he said. So again, you put me, so yes, my identity, I come from Telangana. So what? What is wrong in that? I want to go everywhere in India. I want to spread, I want to create confidence in democracy. What is wrong in that? That has to be the main task of all politicians.
No, I'm asking you whether those identities are in any way in conflict. Your identity as an Indian Muslim, your identity as a representative from Hyderabad of a party like the MIM, which you claim today rejected the two-nation theory, but at the same time was very clear about your identity of your Islamic identity, your identity as someone a representative from the state of Telangana, and your identity as an Indian. Do these conflict with each other, or do they coexist very easily?
This is the third time I got elected to the Indian Parliament. Twice I was a member of State Assembly, and as far as I remember, each time I got elected, no one stood up and said, oh, this is the only Muslim MP we got after 800 years. Which Vishwa Hindu Parishad said, after Modi became Prime Minister, after 800 years, we got a Hindu Prime Minister. So that is not the case. You see, the question is, I believe in the democracy and I have all the right to say what I have to say. And end of the day, please remember that the more such people like me come forward, create more confidence in the democracy, fight for your rights, and empirical evidence is there that backwardness has to be eradicated.
No, the only thing and I'm going to ask it only one last time to you, are these identities in conflict with each other? What is your primary identity? What do you see your primary identity as? Do you see your identity as a South Indian, an Indian Muslim, a representative of Telangana, a representative of a party like the MIM, which stands for Muslim interests, or a pan-Muslim identity? What is your primary identity?
Rajdeep, you and me are trying to, become good human beings. Then it comes South Indian, Telangana, Indian, everything. So, end of the day, if I try to be a good human being, yeah, of course, how can I cut my Telangana identity? How can I cut my Indian identity. These are all part and parcel of this. This is what makes India. And this country celebrates all religions, all cultures, all languages, everything. So we cannot have, oh, this is the fixed parameter of you being a nationalist or your identity. This cannot be the case.
No, it's very interesting you say good human being in a gathering like this, but when you go to your gathering, possibly in old Hyderabad, you'll say Islam khatre mein hai.
No,
that's my worry.
No, I know, the Rajdeep, so you're becoming very predictive. So each time I'm with you, this is I think so this is the golden jubilee of this question. You're asking me, Islam khatre mein hai. So why don't you show me a single clip of my speech, which is available on YouTube, whichever I've said this.
Maybe I should ask your brother. Maybe I should get your brother on the platform
fine,
who I have a clip saying this.
Fantastic, you can ask him. But I'm here in front of you. But why is it, in a public meeting, you have to give a speech? I cannot speak like this over here. People will fall asleep and then they will not vote for me. So I have to keep them alive and send out my message.
So you say Islam khatre mein hai to keep people awake in your meetings?
No, Rajdeep, you are not asking this question that after the Supreme Court judgment, how is it that the Supreme Court has allowed Hinduism and Hindutva to be a way of life, not Islam, Christianity or other as a way of life? That is the mere question you should have asked.
So you believe that appealing on grounds of religion and religious identity is perfectly acceptable if Hindutva is allowed. If you can appeal for votes in the name of Hindutva, you can appeal for votes in the name of Islam.
I would say even Islam is a way of life, even Christianity is a way of life. And then the biggest problem is we have not been able to create a veil between religion and politics. And why only politics? Why election? Why is it that people occupying constitutional posts have to go to every important temple in India and be given security over there? Why can't they go there in a private capacity? Why should courts of law have pictures of God and goddesses? These are the questions which one must answer. If you say that there should be a veil between the religion and politics, so be it. Fine, fantastic. But you cannot remove religion, caste and language from day-to-day Indian. Otherwise, what the dissenting judgment has said, our democracy will be reduced to an abstraction.
So you agree with the dissenting judgment essentially. Yeah. You're saying politicians should be allowed to appeal on grounds of religion, caste, region.
Politician should never say, I am a Muslim, vote for me. I am saying I should have more Muslim members of parliament in India. How is it that in south of India you only have 4 Muslim MPs? Is this secularism? Please answer. That in the whole of south of India, you have only 4 Muslim members of parliament, 2 from Kerala, 1 from Tamil Nadu, and then the most unpopular man sitting beside you.
Because it goes by majority. The constituencies which have a large Muslim population are the only ones where a Muslim MP...
That is why I'm saying the whole debate of secularism is failing. Because I am only told to vote. When it comes to X, Y, Z candidate, people look at that candidate religion and vote for him. That is the main question. Why do we have only 23 Muslim MPs in India's parliament? Why not 61 according to the 2011 census? This is the question you must ask.
No, let me broaden that to the way politics has traditionally taken place in South India. The Dravida movement through the 1960s. Today you are saying that we almost have a superiority complex vis-a-vis North India. But there was, your initial rise was based on a strong linguistic identity and a strong cultural identity that was counterposed against North India. The whole idea that Hindustan would overwhelm you. And it was based on backward caste assertion, an anti-Brahminical movement. Do you concede that even today you appeal on grounds of caste? Do you still believe that caste identity in particular in South India is just as sharp as it is perhaps in a UP and a Bihar? And it's politics that has kept it sharp. Politicians play the caste card.
Actually, the Dravidian movement is over 100 years old, right? So we must first start at the right place. The Justice Party, the South Indian Liberal Foundation, was established in 1916. The Justice Party governed as the administration of Madras Presidency under Dayaki for 17 years. Between 1920 and 1925, the legislations they introduced, compulsory education in elementary schools for men and women, the right to vote for women and the right to stand for legislative assemblies or councils before such right was established in the United Kingdom, the right for all classes to enter temples, the right to not require Sanskrit as a prerequisite for entering medical college. All of these were established by legislation between 1920 and 1926. The nationalization of temples to ensure equality of access and prevent, so-called untouchables from coming. All this was done. So, if you ask me, the Dravidian movement's principles have been unwavering over 100 years. They are self-respect, everybody should be the same. Self-determination, give government to as local a body as possible, whether it's the corporation, the district, the state. Federalism, in other words. Development driven by education, knowledge and awareness and hard work. And a mixed economic model that sees a role for government or public sector enterprises, cooperative movement, and private enterprises. Those standards have not changed in 100 years. Implementations have changed, the rhetoric has changed. The Dravidian movement has effectively administered what is now Tamil Nadu state for 63, 64 years of the last 100. I think the results that we show speak for themselves. Now, if you ask me, is there going to be a greater fragmentization, a greater division? That happens all over the world, right? As people become enabled, as they develop rights, you're going to see administrative units or the nation or the state definition start getting smaller and smaller. We see that in Europe, where the European Union is going to break apart. If you ask me in Africa, where ethnic cleansing is dividing countries. If you ask me in rich, developed countries like Belgium, which cannot get a government together based on ethnic lines. If you ask me in the US, where the blue state, red state divide is becoming so vast that it's impossible to govern, where the administration is elected nationally and Congress is elected by the states. So the fact that separation occurs, obviously there'll be demagoguery, obviously there'll be self-interested kind of pandering, but that's not restricted to one level of administration, and it's certainly not restricted to one party or one movement.
No, but it's interesting you went back in history, and I don't deny the history. But the fact is, a movement based on rationalism, based on, in a sense, anti-Brahmanism, based on an eradication of caste. Today, caste has solidified in some form through politics. You have replaced one, in a sense, caste hierarchy with another. You talk about rationalism and look at the deification that takes place of a Jayalalitha, or dare I say a Shashikala, or dare I say a family.
Listen,
you have converted a Dravidian movement into a family movement.
Okay.
They have converted the AIDMK has converted the Dravidian movement into veneration of an individual. Whatever happened to rationalism? Whatever happened to your original principles?
The original principles, let's go back 100 years. I think, the history is a bit
don't
unclear.
go back 100 years.
No, I'm telling you, let's go back 100 years. Who nationalized the temples? What was the percentage of followers in the Justice Party? My own grandfather, who was Chief Minister of Madras Presidency and the President of the Justice Party, how much has he done to create the image of what is now Sabarimala? What did he do for Madurai Meenakshi Temple? What did he do for Palani? What did he do for Vada Palani? This notion that Dravidianism and religion oppose each other is a false notion. When the first party was being formed.
You believe Periyar would have agreed with that? With what you've just said?
Please, I will send you a quote. I will send you a quote. Please take this quote from Periyar's speech on the philosophy of Dravidianism. He said, if there is a God that says all men and women are equal, if there is a God that allows free thinking and research, if there is a God that doesn't require donations, contributions, certain practices that can only be administered by other people, then such a God I would not have any problem worshipping. For saying as much, I am declared an atheist, a term that has no meaning and is used by thoughtless people to not understand what I'm saying. That is a quote from Periyar, right? So, you can paint anybody with any brush at any time you want. The facts speak for themselves. If there is a big following in Hinduism today, it's because the Justice Party broke Hinduism from the control of the few and brought it to the masses and took the masses to the temples. That's basically why we have such a following of Hinduism.
You believe today Periyar would be happy with what he sees when he sees the Dravidian parties worshipping a Jayalalitha or worshipping almost a Karunanidhi?
Deification of human beings is completely different from A religion or B religion or anything, right? Deification of human beings is usually not accepted in any religion. Does Christianity, other than the time that they sanctify people, do they say you can make up your own gods? Right? Is there anybody other than the great God in Islam? So deification of human beings is usually not a welcome trend in any right-thinking practice or in any right-thinking religion.
Okay. I still wonder whether Periyar would feel satisfied with where the Dravida movement starts today. But Rajiv Gowda, there is another interesting aspect to the kind of divisions which have been created, and that is over water. Interestingly, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, for example, over the Khabare, and virtually every state in the south is at war with each other over water. Whatever then happens to this idea of South India, far from being a united identity in any form, it appears at the end of the day that what has happened over the last 69, 70 years is state identities have consolidated. And those identities actually pit today Kannadiga versus Tamil, Tamil versus Keralite, Andhraite versus someone from Telangana. And a critical element, particularly in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, is water. So where is the common identity? Where is the shared identity, the shared culture? Does it exist in any form? Or have politics, as we've seen politics over water, completely dissolved those, the idea of a common identity?
I think politics over water essentially solidifies sub-regional, not South Indian, but Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Malayali, whatever the sub-identities, but that's for a particular reason. This is still very much within the larger ambit of India and what we promised India in the preamble. Justice is one of the key features there, right? And so justice also involves equitable distribution of water and resources. The issue between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu has to deals with a treaty that was signed 100 years ago under different regimes. The world has changed since then. Cities have grown. Agricultural practices have changed. Measurement of water, is not even something that we agree upon. And as a result, we've got to figure out, as states, as a nation, we need to sit down and work out where is water being used, how is it being used, where is it more vitally needed, what do we do with old versus current needs, old treaties versus current needs.
I'm just wondering whether so in the days of the Madras presidency and Mysore presidency, these problems were far more easily resolved than they are by the Constitution of India. I mean, you've got the Karnataka Chief Minister, your government in Karnataka, rejecting what the Supreme Court says. So I'm just wondering whether in modern times, actually, the identities, if anything, the sub-regional identities have actually strengthened. In the British age, you were able to manage even these disputes far more amicably than you are able to do today.
No, in the British era, there was an inherent inequality. Madras was ruled by the British. Mysore was ruled by the Maharaja of Mysore. And all the kings in India were essentially subservient to the British. And therefore, it was easier for the directly British-ruled regimes to get their way. Also, there are some other factors about irrigation being much more actively practiced in Tamil Nadu and much later after Vishwesvaraya, etc. But we've got to adjust these treaties to the changing times. There's a city like Bangalore which vitally needs water as well. And also, these are all, just think about, let me give you a counter example. Chennai gets its water from the Krishna River. When that was a deal worked out between the chief ministers of South India with Karnataka, which also has a share in Krishna waters, agreeing to, I think N.T. Ramarao was there, Ramakrishna Hegde was there. At that time, we all agreed that Chennai needs its water, and whatever, we will all give up some of our share of the Krishna waters. That is the obverse of what you're seeing today. So that kind of cooperation is also eminently possible. What happens, though, is that these issues very quickly turn into local inflammation. The people turn them into...
Because of politics. Politics has, at the end of the day, destroyed any notion of a unified southern identity. You all are at war with each other. There's more conflict than cooperation.
I don't know why you're harping on a unified southern identity. We're all very happy with the unified Indian identity, and our regional identities as and when they're required. As Asad was pointing out, we all have multiple identities that we engage with in different contexts. Whether it is gender, whether it is caste, whether it's religion, whether it's language. These are all essentially, we're all the same person, but in different contexts, we emphasize a different one. But especially when we are within the larger Indian framework, and I think that is really what animates us.
Let me ask you this, Asaduddin Owaisi. There was a sense that Islam in the south was more benign, more market-friendly, that it was, in a sense, and there was far greater amity between Hindus and Muslims in the south than there was in the north, where the wounds of partition, in a sense, created enormous divisions in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Punjab. Has that changed? Is there a growing radicalization today among the younger Muslims of South India? I know that's an awful generalization, but when you hear of stories both from Kerala and from Karnataka and from Andhra Pradesh of young Muslims who are possibly turning to a greater form of radicalization, does that worry you? Is that true? Is it anecdotally explainable?
Radicalization of any community or caste or in any linguistic group is a cause of concern. Why only Islam? But having said this, if you have 11 crore Muslim youths, and out of that only 27, 28 go and join ISIS, and out of that 27, 16 go from abroad, I would say that yes, this is a cause of concern, but to make it a mountain out of a molehill, that should not really be the case. But yes, any radicalization should be a cause of concern, and I feel that end of the day, the investigation has to be done properly. There should not be any miscarriage of justice. And as far as radicalization is concerned, I feel that throughout South India, any Muslim group or denomination, everyone has condemned it. And within the community, there is a great resilience. I'm sure that even this minute element would be eradicated over a period of time.
No, you say minute, but does it worry you that many of them are coming from the southern states of India? That they are coming in from Bhatkal, Karnataka, that you've had cases in Hyderabad itself, you now have cases in Kerala. Does that worry you that South India, as I said, Islam here was seen to be more benign, more embracing, less suspect to the hostilities between Hindus and Muslims that existed in North India? Has that changed?
Not at all. Rajdeep, the evil ideology of ISIS is a threat to the whole humankind, not only to India. And I feel that the Muslim community is in the forefront of eradicating that ideology. And as far as the South India is concerned, you have some people from Kerala who have gone to Afghanistan, not to, they have not went to ISIS. But yes, no radicalization should ever happen, because when you have a democratic system, one must fight within the democratic four corners of the wall and ask for your rights, because there is no such thing as all these euphemism or wonderland these people have. This, I don't agree with that.
Do you see growing separateness of the two communities? Do you see less of intermingling, less of the kind of shared cultural values perhaps that existed at the start of independence in 1947 compared to today? Would I be right in saying that we have growing Hindu neighborhoods and Muslim neighborhoods even today in southern India?
Of course,
much more than before.
Of course, that is true. That is true. But what is also true is that I believe that majority of the Hindus in this country are secular, but unfortunately they got carried away by a man who speaks very well. And they got carried away because Congress could not put up a formidable opponent. So I would put largely blame on Congress for having BJP in power.
I was wondering when you would come down to that. But look, Narendra Modi is not a factor in southern India. Surely, you're not. Are you going to now sort of blame Modi, BJP, Hindutva for the divisions between Hindus and Muslims in southern India?
Fine.
In fact, Hindutva politics has had very limited impact, barring Karnataka.
Can Mr. Gowda answer this question? And
yes.
You from Maharashtra can answer this question. Why is it that in last 10 years, not a single Muslim MP got elected from Maharashtra or from Karnataka? Why is it that only 4 MPs get elected? And then you have a Coimbatore right 2 months ago here in Tamil Nadu. And we know what happened over there. And then people are...
So who are you blaming for this?
See, there has to be a change in the mindset of people who rule this country.
See,
Karnataka, political parties or whatever it is. This cannot go on forever. You arrest someone and those boys languish in jail 8 years, they come out and no one talks about it. So there has to be some professionalism. And the most important point, you want to control radicalization, fix up responsibility on those investigating officers. If tomorrow I come out after 8 years, that man should lose his job and I should be given adequate compensation.
If you come out innocent, you mean? If you
yes.
come out innocent,
yes.
after 8 years, you should
yes.
be given adequate
Majority
compensation.
of these cases which are blown up in the initial stage by the media and by the right-wing parties, after 6-7 years, no one talks about it. That man has lost everything.
No, those may be cases of miscarriage of justice, but there are also cases where you can't live in denial, where Islamic groups have been found, like
Of
Riyaz
course.
Bhatkal has been found
Of course.
involved in case of terror.
Of course, I'm not denying that. As far as terrorism is concerned, no one can, condone it. It has to be condemned. But my question is that you have many cases of miscarriage of justice, and why is it that throughout India you see the under trials are more in Muslims, and when it comes to conviction, there's a 7% difference throughout India? What does that say? Either the Muslims are hiring the topmost lawyers, or there's no evidence at all against them.
You know, Asaduddin Owaisi can perhaps speak in that sense for his so-called Muslim identity as a representative in a sense of the Indian Muslim of a party like the MIM. The Congress, on the other hand, Dr. Rajiv Gowda, actually has to deal with these multiple identities and has failed to do so. With the result that even in southern India, increasingly your space is actually shrinking. Karnataka today is the only state, and tiny Puducherry, which you control. You've been out of power in Tamil Nadu and are unlikely to return to power in Tamil Nadu for the foreseeable future. You've been out of power for more than 4 decades. Andhra Pradesh, you are slipping out of power. Telangana, you are slipping out of power. Is it the problem that the Congress has that you have been unable to deal with multiple identities? Islam, Southern India, Kannadiga identity, all of these you've been unable to actually cast identities. You've tried to be everything to everyone and ended up being nothing to anyone. That's been the problem.
Congress is an example of an umbrella party, a party that is inclusive, not just in its economic philosophy, but it's in its approach to the nation itself.
But fewer and fewer people live under that umbrella now.
Right.
Fewer and fewer people want to live under your umbrella.
Yeah,
they are happier being part of the Dravidian identity. They are probably happier being part of a regional party than a so-called national party like the Congress.
Right, and that is a phenomenon that we are trying to cope with. In Tamil Nadu, we have made a historic decision to let the Dravidian parties run the state while we got the MPs, and now we are paying the price for that. That particular bargain, where we worked out coalition arrangements for a long time, has let the Congress party, sort of really deteriorate in the state. And in other states, Kerala was still very strong, Karnataka were very strong. Andhra Pradesh, the division of Telangana has backfired on the party itself.
You accept that?
Huh?
That was a bad idea.
Well,
Asaduddin Owaisi blamed the
I'm
Congress
not,
for the division of Andhra Pradesh.
I am not saying anything
about...
about...
You were too clever by half. You thought you would get your seats in Telangana. Even if you lost Andhra Pradesh, you ended up by losing both. That's the reality.
See, Rajni,
and you divided a state.
Sometimes a party and a government responds to the needs of the people regardless of the political consequences to itself. And we would have loved to have had a better outcome in Telangana and in Andhra Pradesh. That did not happen, but it was time for Telangana to be created, and we created it. And so
you have no regrets about splitting the state?
Have we lost political ground? Yes. But Telangana needed to be created, and we created it. That's exactly what I would stand by.
Okay, let me ask, at the very end, we're going to do a rapid fire round with each of you. I'm going to ask you one word, and you've got to think the first thing that comes to your mind when I say this word. Right? The first thing. We'll start with Mr. Tyagarajan. First thing that comes to your mind, Mr. Tyagarajan, when I say India. What comes to your mind? Take the mic.
Democracy.
Take the mic. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say India?
Democracy.
Rajiv Gowda, what's the first thing when I use the word Hindu?
Inclusive.
What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I use the word Muslim?
Patriot.
What's the first thing? Very good. Very good. What's the first thing, Mr. Tyagarajan, that comes to your mind when I say Tamil?
Pride.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say short skirts?
Diversity?
Can I answer that?
Yes. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say short skirts?
It took RSS 90 years to wear long pants.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say jeans, Mr. Tyagarajan?
Choice.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Mr. Rajiv Gowda, when I use the word flag?
Tiranga.
Can you, what do you say? Can you keep the mic close to you?
I said the tricolor. The Indian
Tricolor.
flag. The Indian national flag comes to mind.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I use the word, Mr. Owaisi, national anthem?
Pride, stand up, And if it is being played in cinema hall, I don't know what will happen. So.
No, are you saying you won't stand up if it is played in a cinema hall?
No, you see that it is because of weak executive who do not know how to govern. We have allowed the judiciary to legislate. That is what has happened.
Will you stand up when the national anthem is played in a cinema hall?
It is the law. I have to obey the law.
But you're not happy about it.
And I don't know how many people are happy about it.
Okay, let me ask you another word.
Okay.
And you can take this. Since you use the word patriot, what comes to your mind when I use the word patriot? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Patriot.
Patriot is first thing that comes to my mind are freedom fighters who got us independence.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Rajiv Gowda, when I use the word nationalist?
Nationalist, again, it's the same thing. I come from a family of freedom fighters. That nationalism is very different from this kind of, bogus nationalism that you see being paraded in India today.
What is the difference between your nationalism and the BJP's nationalism? You call it bogus nationalism, is it?
Absolutely. When you are trying to, cover yourself with the, hide behind the soldiers, your job as a nationalist is to ensure that everyone in this country prospers. That you build a nation that ensures that the ideals of secularism are really translated into reality, not one which divides people on the basis of religion through all kinds of subtle messages and tries to reap electoral harvest as a result of that.
What is the first thing that comes to your mind then when you use the word secularism? You use it very freely. What's the word there? What is secularism according to you?
For me, secularism is celebrating everyone's religions, giving respect to them, and ensuring that the state does not privilege one over the other.
It's not about appeasement.
Absolutely not.
What's the first thought that comes to your mind, Mr. Tyagarajan, when I use the word caste?
Unnecessary division.
What's the first thought that comes to your mind when I use the word Hindi?
Questionable relevance.
Asaduddin Owaisi, final word to you. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I use the word beef?
I would love to eat it. If it is halal.
And you have the permission of your state government to say that and your central government to say that, am I right?
To hell with them.
I see. Asaduddin Owaisi, Mr. Tyagarajan, Mr. Rajiv Gowda, thank you very much for joining us on this very special panel on identity politics in southern India. Thanks very much. Give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen.